Chapter 13. Now I will tell the part of my story that touched me the most. These events changed me from what I was into what I am now. Spring came quickly. The weather became warm, and the sky was clear. I was surprised to see how the land, which had looked cold and empty, now had green grass and beautiful flowers. The smells and colors made me feel happy and calm. One day, the family in the cottage was resting. The old man played music on his guitar, and the children listened. I saw that Felix looked very sad. He often sighed. At one point, the old man stopped playing and asked Felix what was wrong. Felix answered in a cheerful voice, but I could tell he was still unhappy. Then, someone knocked at the door. A woman on a horse arrived with a man who showed her the way. She wore dark clothes and a thick black veil that covered her face. Agatha asked her a question. The woman answered softly, only saying the name Felix. Her voice was sweet, but it sounded different from the others. When Felix heard his name, he quickly came to her. She lifted her veil, and I saw her face. She was very beautiful, like an angel. Her hair was shiny black and tied in a special way. Her eyes were dark but kind. Her skin was pale with pink cheeks. Felix looked extremely happy when he saw her. All his sadness disappeared, and he smiled with great joy. His eyes sparkled, and his face became full of life. At that moment, he looked as beautiful as the woman. She was also emotional. She cried a little and gave her hand to Felix. He kissed her hand with love and called her, as best I could hear, his sweet Arabian. She didn't seem to understand, but she smiled. He helped her get off the horse, sent the guide away, and took her into the cottage. Inside, Felix spoke with his father. The woman knelt in front of the old man and tried to kiss his hand. He stopped her and hugged her kindly. I noticed that the woman had her own language, and the family did not understand her, and she didn't understand them. They used many hand signs. Even though I didn't know what they meant, I could see that the whole family became happier because of her. Felix was especially glad. Agatha kissed the woman's hands and made signs to show she knew Felix had been sad before she came. A few hours passed this way. They were all smiling, but I didn't know why. Then I saw that the woman was trying to learn their language. She listened carefully and repeated words after them. I decided to learn with her. In her first lesson, she learned about 20 words. I already knew some of them, but I also learned some new ones. At night, Agatha and the Arabian woman went to sleep early. Before they left, Felix kissed the woman's hand and said, "Good night, sweet Safi." He stayed awake longer, talking to his father. I heard him say her name many times, so I guess they were talking about her. I wanted so badly to understand them, but I couldn't yet. The next day, Felix went to work. After Agatha finished her usual chores, Safi sat with the old man. She played his guitar so beautifully that it made me cry. Her song was both happy and sad. She had a lovely voice that went up and down like a bird singing in the forest. When she finished, she gave the guitar to Agatha, who did not want to play at first, but then she played a simple song and sang. Her voice was soft and sweet, though not as amazing as Safie's. The old man looked very happy and said something. Agatha tried to explain it to Safie. He wanted her to know that her music brought him great joy. The days went by peacefully. Now, the family looked happy instead of sad. Safie was always cheerful. She and I both learned the language quickly. After 2 months, I could understand most of what they said. During that time, the grass became green and many flowers grew. The sun was warm and the nights were soft and clear. I loved walking at night, even though I had to stop early because the days were longer. I never went out during the day because I was afraid people would treat me badly, like they did in the first village I visited. I spent every day learning. I learned faster than Safie. She still spoke slowly and with mistakes, but I understood and copied almost everything. As I learned the language, I also began to read. Felix used a book to teach Safie. It was called Ruins of Empires by Volney. I wouldn't have understood it without Felix's help. He explained everything in detail. He chose this book because it sounded like writing from Safie's part of the world. Through this book, I learned a little about history. I heard about different countries and empires, their governments, cultures, and religions. I learned about the lazy people of Asia, the smart and creative Greeks, and the strong and brave Romans. I also learned about their fall. I heard about knights, Christianity, and kings. I heard about how America was discovered and felt sad with Safie about the people who lived there before. These stories gave me strange feelings. How could humans be so great and kind, yet so cruel and selfish too? Sometimes they seemed like gods, and sometimes like monsters. Being a good person seemed the greatest thing someone could be. Being evil was the worst. I didn't understand how people could hurt each other. But when I learned more about war and crime, I stopped wondering. I felt disgusted. Every day, I learned something new from the cottagers. By listening to how Felix taught Safie, I began to understand human society. I learned about money, poverty, power, family, and respect. Then I thought about myself. I had no money, no family, and no home. I looked different from people. My body was large and ugly. I was stronger and could live in hard conditions, but I was still alone. I never saw anyone like me. Was I a monster? Did people run from me because I was too horrible to look at? These thoughts hurt me deeply. I tried to forget them, but the more I learned, the more pain I felt. Sometimes I wished I had never left the forest and never learned anything. Knowledge is strange. Once it enters your mind, you can't get rid of it. Sometimes I wanted to stop thinking, but I learned there was only one way to stop pain: death. I didn't understand it, but I feared it. I wanted to be good, like the cottagers, but I could only watch them in secret. Their kind words and smiles were not for me. Even the old man's wise advice or Felix's friendly talk was not for me. I was alone, miserable. I also learned about men and women and how children are born. I saw how fathers love their babies and mothers cared deeply for their children. I learned about brothers, sisters, and all the ways people are connected by love. But what about me? I had no father or mother. No one loved or raised me. If I ever had a past, it was blank. I had always been the way I was, tall and strange. I never met another like me. What was I? This question came again and again, and I had no answer, only pain. I will soon tell you what I decided to do because of all this. But first, let me go back to the story of the cottagers. Their lives gave me many different feelings: anger, joy, and wonder. But in the end, I loved and respected them very much. Chapter, f- Chapter 14. It was a story that touched me deeply. To me, everything in it was new and amazing. The old man's name was De Lacy. He came from a rich and respected family in France. He had lived in Paris for many years, where people liked and respected him. His son, Felix, had worked for the government, and his daughter, Agatha, had lived a good and noble life. A few months before I arrived, they lived in a big, beautiful city, Paris. They had many friends and lived a happy life. But everything changed because of Saifi's father, a Turkish man. He had lived in Paris for many years, but for some reason, the government arrested him and put him in prison. This happened on the same day that Saifi came from Constantinople to visit him. He was judged unfairly and sentenced to death. He was judged unfairly and sentenced to death. Many people in Paris were angry because they believed the government punished him only because of his religion and money, not because of any real crime. Felix happened to be in the courtroom. When he heard the sentence, he was shocked and angry. He promised himself that he would save the man. He tried many times to get into the prison. Finally, he found a small window with bars in a quiet part of the building. Behind that window was the Turkish man, in chains, waiting to die. Felix went there at night and told the man he wanted to help him escape. The man was very happy and surprised. He promised Felix money and rewards, but Felix said no. He didn't want a reward. But when Felix saw Saifi, the Turkish man's daughter, he was touched. She thanked him with her eyes and kind gestures. Felix began to hope that one day he might marry her. The Turkish man noticed that his daughter liked Felix. So he promised that Felix could marry Saifi after they escaped. Felix didn't say yes right away, but he hoped it would happen. During the next few days, while Felix prepared the escape, Saifi wrote him letters. She thanked him for helping her father. She wrote in French with help from an old servant who spoke both Turkish and French. In her letters, she also wrote about her life and her sadness. I found these letters later while I lived in the small hut near the family. I learned how to write and copied the letters. I will give them to you later to prove my story. For now, I will tell you what they said. Saifi's mother was a Christian Arab. She had been taken as a slave by the Turks, but because she was beautiful, Saifi's father married her. Saifi loved her mother very much. Her mother had been free and taught Saifi about her religion and about being strong and independent. These ideas were not allowed for women in the Muslim world. Saifi's mother died, but Saifi never forgot her lessons. Saifi did not want to return to Turkey, where women lived in harems and had no freedom. She wanted to stay in Europe, where women could live more freely and be educated. She also wanted to marry Felix, a Christian. The day of the Turkish man's execution was set, but the night before, he escaped. Felix had gotten false passports for himself, his sister Agatha, and his father de Lacy. They all left Paris and hid. Then Felix helped the Turkish man and Saifi escape to Italy. They went to Leghorn, a city in Italy. The Turkish man planned to leave for Turkey from there. Saifi stayed with her father until he was ready to leave. He promised again that she could marry Felix. Felix stayed too. He and Saifi grew closer. She loved him very much, and they talked using a servant as a translator, or just with looks and music. Saifi sang songs from her homeland. But the Turkish man was lying. He did not want his daughter to marry a Christian. He was afraid of Felix and didn't want trouble. So he acted kindly, but planned to leave Italy with Saifi secretly. Then bad news came from France. The French government was angry that the Turkish prisoner had escaped. They found out Felix had helped, so they arrested de Lacy and Agatha. When Felix heard this, he felt terrible. His father and sister were in a dark, dirty prison, while he was free and happy with Saifi. So, he made a deal with the Turkish man. Saifi would stay at a convent in Leghorn if Felix didn't return in time. Then Felix went back to Paris and gave himself to the police, hoping to free his family. But it didn't work. De Lacy and Agatha stayed in prison for 5 months. After the trial, they lost all their money and were forced to leave France forever. They found a small home in Germany, in the countryside. That is where I found them. Felix was sad and angry. He could accept being poor because he had done the right thing. But he couldn't bear the betrayal of the Turkish man and the loss of Saifi. When the Turkish man heard that Felix had lost everything, he left Italy with Saifi and sent Felix a small amount of money, saying it was to help him in the future. This was insulting to Felix. But Saifi didn't agree with her father. When he told her to forget Felix and prepare to return to Turkey, she was angry. She tried to change his mind, but he shouted at her and walked away. A few days later, the Turkish man came to her room in a hurry. He said someone had told the French where he was. He had paid for a ship to take him to Constantinople that would leave in a few hours. He told Saifi that she would stay behind with a servant and follow him later with the rest of his money. But after he left, Saifi made her own plan. She did not want to live in Turkey. She found some papers that told her where Felix and his family were living. She took some jewels and money and left Italy with a woman who spoke Turkish. They arrived in a town about 20 leagues from the DeLacy cottage. But the woman became very sick and soon died. Safi was alone in a country where she didn't know the language. Luckily, she met kind people. The woman who owned the house helped her, and soon Safi reached the cottage of her lover, Felix.